To Weekly Open. My name's Brian. We've got everybody here today. Dads, not dads, new dads, all of them. Thanks for being here. We appreciate you. And let's say hey to the guys. Don, new father. Congratulations. How you doing?
Thank you. Very good. Like everyone's been like, "Oh, you're not gonna get any sleep. You're not gonna be okay." But my little one has been very kind. She sleeps through the night, and
Through the night?
yep,
That makes
she.
no sense. That will regress.
No, she sleeps for 7 hours a night, and then she eats every half an hour after waking up, like half
Okay,
an
so
hour to an hour.
you like triple the amount of feeding
Oh yeah, but
after she wakes up. Yeah.
she's gaining like perfect weight. Like she's actually gaining more than normal, as in like she's just eating a lot when she's awake, and then she just sleeps during the night, which has been very nice. Which basically means I have nothing to do during the night other than sleeping.
Well, that's very rare, and I guess I shouldn't be surprised Don wins again.
Yeah, it's going well.
Hello, Cred. How are you?
I've also been sleeping through the night and eating every 30 minutes or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I really can't complain.
Good.
How are you, Nedra?
I'm doing okay. My ego is a little bit hurt. I played pickleball yesterday for the first time ever, and this is supposed to be like nearly a sedentary sport. Like boomers are allowed to play it. And I thought I got cramps after about an hour, and they remained with me, and then they're still there this morning. So it turns out I managed to like tweak a muscle in my calf playing pickleball, like major boomer move. So
I was about to say, like, isn't that the meme of pickleball that like
yes,
the old people injure themselves?
and I'm literally that person. So anyway, that's me.
Well,
yeah.
hope you
So
recover soon.
That's great.
Sorry for laughing.
No, it's pretty funny. I mean, I had fun, but yeah, I tweaked a muscle in my leg. So, all right, we're consolidating. We didn't record last week because Don was rude and had a baby, and then nothing really happened. So lucky us. Do you want to give us a rundown of the charts, Don, and then we'll kind of go from there?
Yeah, I can. The monthly is still like pretty boring. Nothing really there. We have a support at 23K ish. We have resistance at 35, and I mean it's looking better than last month, but not by much. It's just basically just floating between support and resistance. The weekly is a little bit more interesting because we went back into the area that I've titled indecision. The last time we were here, I was like, okay, this is where you risk off, because if we break it, we come back into the old range, the old bull market range. And it makes sense to just kind of see if we actually want to break it or not. That was here. And then we kind of went down. Now with BlackRock kind of filing for the ETF, we had a little bit of a bounce, chilling back in exactly that zone that we got rejected in previously. And like on its own, just TA wise, that doesn't look too bad, right? Like as long as we're holding this support, which is like 30K, and so far we've been bouncing from 30K, even on low time frames, over and over and over and over again. But as long as we hold that, it looks okay. One thing that I'm a little bit worried about is that I was expecting this kind of news to have more of an effect. So far,
a 1 week, one and done.
Yeah, that's just weird, right? Like
also clearing that level on the left that you just ignore, but making a new local high, and then not really doing anything.
Yeah, it's a little bit frustrating, and it's a little bit like that has me a little bit on edge, especially given, and we'll talk about that later. I'm assuming that the S&P is at resistance. Like that combination has me more cautious than this chart would kind of suggest, right? If you're just looking at the chart, that's quite good still, given we had the positive news and we have the S&P at resistance, I'm a little bit like not as excited as I was during this candle. And sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, on the other side of the table, like the 33K by July meme has existed for 5 years and never once worked. So this is the closest we've ever been to that. So maybe that means something.
Oh yeah, that actually be funny. Yeah,
Come on, Josh.
Josh,
Pull
give
through.
it to us. It's just 10%. But yeah, like in general, like I'm pretty neutral here personally. I don't have any positions. I've been kind of like fighting myself. Like I've been wanting to open like longs, and then I've been like, nah, cannot. The S&P's at resistance. This reaction is kind of shit to the news that we've had. And then I look at it again. Every time it was at 30K, I was like getting a little bit of FOMO, and then it bounced a little bit, and I'm like, well, it actually doesn't look that good. So I don't know. Like this is a little bit of an odd spot for me. And I've decided to just kind of let it go, see if it wants to be bullish, let it be bullish, which would kind of mean above 33K. And then we can kind of like jump on the train or like do whatever, play the bullish side at that point. But until then, I just want to see how this kind of indecision zone affects things, and I want to see that play out. And then if we're trading above it, cool. I'm going to look for pullbacks. If we're trading below it, also cool. Then I'll look for buys in support, which would be kind of here. So that's kind of my scaredy cat analysis. I don't really have the strongest urge to jump into this market, given the S&P. Really, like the S&P is the one thing that has me worried the most. So yeah, that's Bitcoin. I don't really think there's anything on the daily, honestly. Like this just been chop. So I think the weekly's been the best, and the daily's just kind of garbage. The monthly's kind of garbage. The weekly does the trick.
So Cred, we had a pretty clear breakout that Don's showing right here after, you talked a lot rightly of this is just more downside, right? Like it's a downtrend. It's not chop. And now we're kind of properly chopping, but there really wasn't a lot of time to get in that move once the downtrend broke. So how do you kind of look at that and figure out what you want to do in it?
Yeah, I mean, this is real chop now on like the daily 4-hour whatever, because like price is quite literally going sideways and stuck at the same levels. I mean, if I can screen share this 4-hour very quickly, give me a moment. Chrome tab, hopefully it's the right one. I hope that's working. I mean, this is chop because there's no significant shift in market structure, and it's just going sideways, right? That's fairly self-evident. Like the first high that was set hasn't been breached at all. That's where all the resistance has been. The low that was set in this consolidation hasn't been breached either. That's where all the bounces have been. So this is good chop as far as meeting the definition of chop. It's probably not good for people's P&Ls given how some of these wicks look. But in terms of just like calling it chop, this is pretty choppy. So there's my useful insight as far as the low time frames go. I think you can probably do some standard range trading around here. It's just the longer it lasts, eventually you're going to get carried out by an impulse. So the earlier the range generally, the better it is to trade. The early mid portion, when you have maybe 2-3 tests, tends to make for the best lower time frame trading. And then when you really get strong compression, the cost of being wrong generally goes up, and it becomes far less attractive to punt on those terms. But I think given we talked about the ambiguity of the monthly, the weekly to some extent. I mean, the daily looks similar to those other higher time frames. I really think if you're going to be punting anything at all, it has to be sort of low time frame rotations on BTC, and that in itself hasn't been like super attractive from a percentage move point of view. One thing that I think I sometimes just catch myself looking at like the specific candles and where is the failed breakout, shifted market structure, whatever. I think if you just zoom out, the market is essentially still stuck around April's high, and that's the top of some sort of range, right? If we take it back further, you can see that it aligns with more or less the top of the 30K-ish pre-breakdown consolidation. So that's kind of where the market is. And if you're going to make an argument for strength, it has to come above there. And then that would also be a reclaim of this entire structure. Then we can talk about some sort of gap fill price action into the high 30s up to 40, whatever, it gets pretty interesting. But at the moment, if you just zoom out and just look at this thing, it just came into April's high and it's just been getting sold since then. Now, that's not a uniformly bearish argument because it's been getting sold for a while, but it hasn't sort of broken even daily market structure yet, right? It's sort of been holding these shallow pullback levels. And so we found an equilibrium of some sort where the sellers are willing to stuff it around April's high and the levels that correspond with it at around 31. And buyers are willing to soak it up from them under 30K. So it's like the battle, like 30K ends up, that's why this is a real range, right? Like 30K is some version of fair value. If it goes below that, there are enough below fair value or discount buyers willing to soak it up. If it goes above that, there are enough willing to sell it. And when the market is kind of in these types of areas, point of control, at equilibrium, whatever, it's really hard to sort of trade with an edge, certainly from higher time frames. That's, I think, where a lot of the agnosticism understandably comes from. A final point I'll make is I spoke about sort of probably on this show and others that the shallow pullback level on the 4 hour is sort of 29.9 or thereabouts, and that sort of overlaps with these daily highs as well. I'm sure you could do a candle body type situation if you wanted to, although it doesn't matter, pretty much the same thing.
Did we get pretty close to that just this weekend?
The daily one or these ones?
The 29.9.
Yeah. I mean, we got pretty, like this weekend, was that on, sort of towards the end of last week, that was the last test. And then over the weekend, it was much sort of tighter, if you will. But like bigger picture on the 4 hour, this seems like a reasonable, if it's going to be strong, it should hold this type of thing, because we know that there's sort of daily and 4 hour structure there that's been holding up the market. And then if this range breaks for real without any sort of reclaim to define your risk, like if it actually just breaks down, I don't love a lot of this, right? That sort of downtrend break that you were talking about, and I'd expect us to go lower. But look, if I were at the, I don't know, pub with my friends, if I had any friends or went to the pub, I'd be making the same argument. They're like, look, man, I don't know. Buyers like it below 30, sellers love it above 30. So one of them has to lose, essentially, and then you'll get some clarity.
Yeah. And in terms, I had a line here. I'm just going to turn this on and brag about it. I don't know when I drew this green line right here, but I think it might be referencing a weekly level. Yeah, it is. So that's that weekly high from April that you were just referencing. And the one thing that kind of frustrates me on a daily basis here is that you had like plenty of daily closes above that important level, and even the daily closes from back there, but you didn't have them over the wick. But anyway, I get a little frustrated when you can look at this and be like, oh, that's a breakout. It's a new local high on a daily close. And the market just didn't really support that at all. That's the thing that frustrates me about it. At the same time, I'm not like overly bearish, like, okay, well, here's my swing failure pattern, blah, blah, blah. I don't really buy into those too much. Maybe that's why I'm not a very good trader sometimes. But that's my one beef about a breakout like this. Like if you just got this daily here and then it hovers and you get those subsequent daily closes, below 30.4 or whatever, then that's one thing. I really want to see that impulse to be sooner than later if you're going to break out of that range and get like cleanly above that previous April weekly level. Because stuff like this just frustrates me, and maybe that's why the market does it. But
yeah, I mean it's pretty, like, it's not clean, this one, anyway. Like the narrative would be good enough. The S&P's been going up only, so basically the backdrop was pretty good, so you would have expected, or at least I expected, this to move faster. And given it's not, it's a bit of an odd one, because then you're above or at the levels where you need to be, but also you kind of have to wonder, like, why is this actually not going right? There's a bunch of people that have been buying Bitcoin just because of the ETF news, like literally just because of that, and you would have kind of thought that they would get rewarded for it. But so far, people have been selling into them as much as people have been buying, which is a bit of an odd one given the magnitude of the situation, in my opinion, anyway. So that has me a little bit stumped, and that is
maybe it has something to do with just how many like of these weekly wicks there were. in these same type of ranges, creds fair value, 28 to 34K. Maybe some of the more bearish market participants can't fathom like above this yellow box, because that almost indicates new paradigm type of markets. I don't know.
I mean, it would start looking really good if we went above there. And that's a cool thing, right? Like, if you're a little bit cautious here and you buy like 10-15% higher, I think the chances of you actually getting out of that it's much, much better. As in, like, I think here it's basically a coin toss. Like, if I had to put odds on this going up or down, I'd say it's like the 50-50, roughly, almost. Whereas if we go to like 35 and I had to make another coin toss or like another prediction whether this goes up or down, at that point I'd be like, I think it's more likely to go to 45 than it is to go back to 30, right? And then that trade is much more like reasonable to me, given that I think the likelihoods are in your favor. The move is probably gonna be quite large at that point. So I'm gonna be the boring one and be like, I just don't see the point in getting over eager at resistance, especially given how shit the market has been, and especially given that the S&P is at resistance. But I could also see myself be really mad at me, being like, this is just stupid. Like, if this goes to 40K and I don't get an entry and it just keeps on going, and I'd be like, I mean, I should have known. It's an ETF from BlackRock. Like,
yeah.
Like, this is the struggle that I'm having. This is why I'm kind of like sitting there wondering if I should be in or not.
The whole 500 to 1 thing like makes me extremely hesitant to fade that type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems very, very unlikely to fail, right? Like, I'd be shocked. But then again, like, if it fails, we're gonna get proper wiped out. I think even if it gets delayed, which is possible, doesn't, like, the chances of it getting denied are higher if it gets delayed over and over again. But I think, like, delaying it once wouldn't surprise me too much. And I think even that would lead to quite a sizable nuke. One that I would be willing to buy, I think, just based on the fact that, I still think you don't want to fade something like 500 to 1 ETF odds, basically. Like, that just seems stupid. I don't think BlackRock would necessarily apply, especially in a market like this one, right? Like, you don't want to embarrass yourself in crypto as the largest asset manager.
We've also been talking a lot in the ecosystem about how Gary hates crypto or whatever, Gary Gensler. But the thing is, he mostly attacks like not Bitcoin. They talk bad about all the other coins. They've been harsh on exchanges who trade those coins, but they really haven't said a whole bunch or made any targeted attempts at Bitcoin itself. At least in my mind, maybe I'm missing something. And I feel like it's a pretty good defense if you're the SEC to be able to continue to go after all the other things if you are also the same SEC who approves the physical Bitcoin ETF.
I don't think they can politically. The issue is, in the past, that they've like, if you had to steelman the argument for ETF delay or denial, it'd be some version of the following: that in the past they've happily delayed Bitcoin and just crypto related ETFs because they've argued that there hasn't been a sufficiently robust surveillance sharing agreement, right? Which is to say, there needs to be some sort of global regulated, sufficiently high volume spot market to be able to get transparency into whatever the underlying ETF tracks. The problem is with BlackRock, Fidelity, etc., they have all named Coinbase as their partner for the surveillance sharing agreement. So now you have, if the SEC approves, they put themselves into an impossible position where, for the first time after dozens of denials, they've approved a spot ETF. And the core part of that ETF, which is the spot market and surveillance sharing agreement, etc., is from an exchange that they're currently litigating against for mass kind of securities, falling afoul of securities regulations and so on and so forth. So then it sort of becomes the question is, can they credibly at the same time be in strong litigation against Coinbase while also approving an ETF or a number of ETFs, all of which exclusively have Coinbase as their partner for the SSA. That's tricky.
That's a good point. I don't know.
But I don't know anything. I'm not a lawyer. I could have been one, but I started doing this shit instead, and look at me now.
Now you're a media mogul.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, I don't know. It would be a punch in the face. I mean, market impact-wise, I agree with Don. If we get delayed or denied, this entire weekly and probably more is going to retrace. I was initially I was like 90 in my head, about 95% sure because of BlackRock tenure that they would get approval. I think I've revised that down in my head, at least, maybe to like 70 or 80. I haven't thought about it too much, but just the Coinbase angle makes me somewhat uncertain.
I actually like that argument a lot.
By far the best I've heard in terms of reasons against.
Yeah. Right. Gosh.
I wonder how long. I wonder how long Gensler would be at the SEC if that happened, though.
That would also be bullish. Yes.
Your more traditional power broker type of institutions are definitely not going to be happy about that.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. But the thing is, Gensler, do you remember when he actually first got announced, how excited everyone was? I was on Twitter that day or that week or whatever. They were like, oh, look, he taught a blockchain course and he like gets all this stuff. And now he's, Satan incarnate.
Yeah. There were a few outliers of people that were like not as thrilled, but there was, plenty of evidence through those videos and stuff that he at least was aware of the ecosystem, going to pay attention to it, and that he has.
It's a bit like American foreign policy in the Middle East, right? You never know who you're going to get afterwards to fill the gap if you take away what you perceive to be the bad guy. So careful what you wish for when it comes to regulatory or geopolitical regime change.
Most people, if you said, I'll take Jay Clayton back, like they'd be like,
ASAP.
Sounds good. Shall we look at some other coins and figure out if there's any follow through, or do you want to start with more macro-y stuff like the Dixie or the S&P?
I mean, Don's been using the S&P to bolster his FUD arguments, so probably
Don,
worth revisiting.
Yeah, show us the S&P. I'll note while you're showing this at resistance, the Russell 2000 on the other side of the coin looks like it wants to join the party. So give us an argument for this resistance.
I mean, the argument is just that it's resistance. I mean, I can't, like the thing is, like I'm not an expert S&P trader, but so far it's been working quite well with just trading lines, which is a bit odd. But as long as it's working, I'm not gonna try to fade it too much. And I've kind of been assuming that we were gonna get a range basically in here, and right now we're kind of at the upper end of that range, right? We ran back into the top consolidation that we had. So if you are going to get a lower high eventually, I think this would be the spot, as in anywhere here, where you have a high here and then you get a lower high here and then you go lower again for a while. Like that would make sense. And it's not that far away from all-time high where you can just kind of like be like, okay, if this actually pushes higher and we go back to all-time high, that's like a couple % away. It's not too bad to miss that either. Like it just makes sense to be a little bit cautious. And then if we come back to all-time high, I mean, it's back to basically like if went up, this would be dip buying territory, right? So I think at that point it would make sense to be bullish again. But I don't mind being like a little bit of like a reserved bull, as long as this is in place, right? We went from support to resistance. I don't want to be too bullish into resistance, even though, like, I mean, this is an incredibly bullish chart. I wouldn't necessarily want to be like, I've always made fun of the bear charts for the S&P. Like this thing is made to only go up.
Yeah.
But I think this could take a while longer. And that's kind of like the way I think about the whole, like all the markets, basically. Like a bunch of people were very bullish, got nuked, and then turned very, very bearish on a lot of this rally. And I think that's where a lot of this rally comes from, right? Like a bunch of people are just sidelined or shorting this thing. And then it just walked up. And I think at this point we're so far up that I could see the other side kind of get wrecked for once. But wouldn't want to bet on that. Like it's not like I'm short the S&P. I'm not even short crypto. I'm just like, I'm in observer mode basically. And I think it makes sense to kind of let this play out. See if we can close above resistance. See if we fall back below kind of this range high here. Yeah, that's just
what is
kind of
that
how
red? What is that red?
4.3.
Okay.
4.3K.
Yeah, see, that was my long term. I think I've said it on the show at some point, but like I just felt like 4,300 was a magnet right here. And I ran into the problem of it went through that, so now what? Because I didn't have significant I didn't have significant expectations of better than that. And especially you kind of look at these big like lower high peaks that was that. And so now the next one would be 45, 50, something like that. If it goes above that, it really you're gonna have people screaming for all-time highs at that point. And I wonder, like, do the animal spirits kind of take over, and you just have more of these passive flows, which love to occur in the S&P. I just am not a believer in new all-time highs, as you've mentioned, and I don't know where my drawing went. I must not be on the right one. There it is. It was on the SPX, not the futures there. Yeah, so I've just had this squiggle that I was like, kind of your same point about not quite doom and gloom, but not exactly pretty. And so we're testing the limits of my sideways, like no all-time high type of thing. I mean, you can put this on many parts of the chart, but the point is just not above here, right? Like that's the biggest point. But we already kind of met my expectations in terms of what the top of that range would look like. And I wonder if it continues to go without much by way of drawbacks, like, do you start to just put too much momentum in the market to put it back in the bottle? I don't know.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult right now. I would say like all markets are pretty difficult right now. Just based on the fact that we're like at the edge of going back to business as usual, but we're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
Both Bitcoin and the S&P, if you think about it, right? Bitcoin is exactly at the edge of back in the old range, and the S&P is exactly at the edge of, okay, is it gonna make a new high or not? Like this is very close to a new high at the S&P, and Bitcoin is very, very close to returning into this bull range. And then you like both are at exactly the edge, and that's usually the place where you would want to short, right? Like those are where you have the maximum risk to reward, but you also have a good chance to get completely wrecked, because a lot of people will think the same, and a lot of people will be on the wrong side of the market if this kind of rips. So
well, the Nasdaq's basically already up there in that higher one, like go any higher in your basically at all-time highs, and it's being carried by AI themes, I think, or at least like a narrow part of the market, but I think mostly AI. And Nvidia is spending like 4 or 5 weeks consolidating at all-time highs, and I don't know, man.
It's getting crazy again a little bit. Good old crazy times.
I mean, tech has historically been a really great performer, and people consistently fade it as it keeps going up. And you're seeing that happen right now. Like some tech is at all-time highs or near it. And just, I mean, look at that. Look at Facebook. Good gracious.
Yeah, that was wild.
People hated Facebook. Hated it.
At 100, yeah.
Yeah.
I still remember, like, I shielded on stream at 100, and I was too lazy to buy it myself, like an idiot.
But imagine just trading these tech stocks instead of Bitcoin, how much more money we would have.
Yeah, and it's less risk too, right? Like the thing is, like, there's still way less risk than crypto, and it's been more volatile and it's been better, which is a bit of a bummer. Like, look at that monthly chart.
Yeah, we are. I mean, crypto's clearly on the back seat of interest in terms of volatility and people wanting to trade it.
Yeah, and I mean, this is literally up only. There's no red candle on this monthly. And then it's like, do you want to long into the 9th month of green? Because you're gonna expect like 10 more. I don't know. Like, it's really, really tough. But I mean, this is also a resistance technically if you look at it. But also, would you actually want to fade this? I don't know. Like, if this is gonna make a lower high, it would be here, right?
Why don't you throw a coin up there, because that's at the marriage of these two. So, tech stock, but also crypto stock, and recently has looked better than Bitcoin itself.
Yeah, coin.
If you're a pattern trader, your first patterns you learn are about to show up here. Well, you're on too big of a time frame, but there's your little inverted head and shoulders type of thing if you want to believe in that, and certainly a lot of consolidation and breakout of that consolidation. You wouldn't think they're being sued by the SEC when you look at this.
Yeah, that actually looks quite good. Yeah, I mean, it's also like this is one of the tickers that just goes up and down like 10% every other day. Which is quite wild. Yeah. Like Bitcoin goes up 2% and then this goes up 10, and then Bitcoin goes down 2 or 3% and this goes down 10, and you're like, what is this? But yeah, it's an interesting one. I technically, like you said, inverse head and shoulders at the range high, so to speak, I would say, like at 80-ish. But if that breaks, I don't know where that's gonna go. Like the next resistance is 160.
Yeah, mining stocks have also been doing really well. I'll just pull one up real quick. And this is, I just think this is a strange but noteworthy thing to look at. Yeah, so this is Riot, one of the mining stocks, and it's 200-week moving average there, and already kind of pushed above that same from a time frame perspective, right? Like when Bitcoin broke down, it's already pushed up into that where Bitcoin has not. I find that interesting. I wonder if these are kind of leading indicators for Bitcoin being able to work up into those types of levels. All the healthy stuff like your on-chain people talk about, like your hash rate and whatnot, are all doing very well, and maybe this mining market and Coinbase stock and whatnot are acting smarter than cryptocurrencies themselves.
Yeah, but can people just buy Bitcoin instead?
I know. It'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's the same with the VCs, right? Stop just buying garbage, just buy Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Because the garbage is gonna go up if you buy Bitcoin. Like that's the cool thing about it, right? Like you make Bitcoin pump 50%, you're gonna get your 200% on an altcoin eventually. But if you don't, like if you just put your money into an altcoin, you're probably gonna get your 90% drawdown instead. It's a bit of an odd one. But
one other thing, at least to me, I find supportive of continuation in the positive side for both stocks and crypto is, I think the Dixie still looks like crap. Still looks like it doesn't really have much of an appetite to break upwards. And at best, it seems like it wants to stay in this range that it's been at the midpoint. So if you get a breakdown of this, that would be pretty significant for the bull case of everything else.
Hey, look, as long as they keep plunge protecting BNB, we'll be okay.
Oh,
that's what really matters here.
Yeah,
okay, guys, like dollar and altcoins and stuff, great. Just keep the bid on BNB. More launch pads, please, and we'll be okay.
Craig keeps bringing up the one things that like make me nervous, but yeah, there's maybe a little bit of an air gap in here if this broke down.
A tiny bit.
Fair enough. The respect to TA. Look at your 200. Is that the 200-week ledger?
It is. It is. It's a 200-week.
Yeah. Excellent.
But you look back on things like this is only 3 weeks of price action during 2021. So if Binance falls, it could fall hard. It'll be a great trade for the doomers, like if any doomer is correct or whatever.
Yeah, but they'll take that trade on Binance and make like.
Yeah, is it where can you even trade it? I'm sure you can trade it at Bybit or something like that.
You can, but yeah, I don't know. This, I mean, have you seen the prices on Binance US? I mean, obviously it's a sort of beleaguered wartime exchange at the moment.
That's one place I would.
That place is pretty broken now. And then BNB itself. The launchpad bid is my favorite activity.
I don't even know what that is.
Yeah, it's like launchpad. They sort of have this incubator launchpad type program, raffled off, or you need BNB to participate or you get airdropped some if you have BNB. I haven't looked at the exact mechanism, but it's to the benefit of the Binance ecosystem via BNB. And so some analysts were noting how they've just been ramping up the number of launch pads when, well, given recent price action in general. So that's been...
Listen, guys, trading is easy. Here's what you do.
Oh my God, legend. Thanks for playing. Yeah.
Actually has a chance to play out if Binance completely goes bust. I mean, you're gonna go to target and then some.
Your stop is a 65% gain in BNB.
I mean, the sad part is, right, like if and this is like I'm not in the camp that like Binance is gonna disappear, whatever. Like I think that's unlikely, but I am in the camp like I don't have any money on Binance, and I probably don't, like I'm not gonna have any money on Binance. Especially looking at this chart, like if BNB breaks down, like I wonder what happens. We've had the same thing happen with FTT, right? Like the moment it broke a support level like this one, the entire thing just went to shit, and I don't want to be anywhere close to it. I don't think the same thing would play out, but I would not be risking it this time around.
Yeah. A lot of Binance employees take their salaries and stuff in BNB as well.
Yes. Yeah, very and funny. All the bonuses are paid in BNB. So it's something to watch, because if it breaks down for like quote unquote no reason, there might be some employees that are selling because they know something that's going on.
I do think it's a little foolish to say like, okay, well, it's exactly like the Binance situation is exactly the same as the FTX situation. I think that's highly unlikely.
Oh yes,
but it doesn't mean that the Binance situation isn't bad. Like it might just be a different kind of bad.
Like if you asked me about like, do you think that Binance did anything illegal? I mean, very likely. Like, oh yeah, in my mind, right? Like
in Minecraft, allegedly.
In Minecraft, allegedly. Like it just like from like how it all went back in the day, back when they launched, the way they listed, the way they kind of made people pay to list their coins, allegedly, whatever. All that kind of stuff seemed very shady to me at that time. And I don't think they necessarily operate the same way, right? Like that's the thing with Binance. Like if they got for something that they did, it's probably gonna be in the past. But then the question is like, is that gonna save them that like they cleaned up their act in the last 2-3 years, or not? And I'm not good enough at law to kind of see the odds of that. Like just being like, hey, yeah, maybe this went wrong, but now we're the good guys. I don't know if that's gonna
like fly. If you murder someone and then do community service, I heard the murder charge goes away. So.
Well, plus there's the SEC used this in their PR, but the Binance chief compliance officer in 2018 said in one of the chats, "We are operating as a effing unlicensed security exchange in the USA, bro."
So unfortunate wording.
Yeah. It must be a language barrier idiom thing that we don't understand.
Yeah, obviously taken out of context, right?
Right.
But I mean, I think Catherine Coley, or the presumption is Catherine Coley and some others may have turned over some internal chats, and they found that and a bunch of other stuff, and maybe they
recently as well, right? They had Patrick Hillman and like a bunch of people leave at the same time. Well, obviously they didn't, because CZ said it was misleading. So
yeah, they needed to spend more time with their family, or they were sick.
Yeah, I was telling Don on another time we were chatting, I'm like, the only thing we learned is that all those execs have their wives go to the same book club or something, because they're just complaining about their husbands being like fat or not being there or whatever at the same time. So they miraculously decide to leave at the same time. How awfully convenient, right? Also, it's not like I've heard when sort of people reproduce, which I have no experience, it just sort of creeps up on you, and there isn't a sort of 9-month period where you're going to have a child. So no wonder this came as a surprise on the 9th month that he's going to have a kid and had to leave.
I think the thing with CZ though is he's never been the type of person you look at and they like admit to, oh, here's our challenges or wrongdoing. It's always
no, of course not. No.
Always like kind of a, well, here's how. Yeah, like it's just more FUD, bro, and we work very hard to fix it. And I do think they probably work very, very hard as an exchange. Like I'm not belittling that at all. but I don't think that they ever like try to step down from the high ground, like
no,
and just like there's not a lot of humility there, I don't think.
Yeah, I think that's where my personal almost animosity to that style of PR comes from, is I can't stand people like that, like in just normal, regular people who always seem to have an answer for everything. And there's always an excuse, always a justification, and never taking like a step back or correcting their priors or anything of that nature. Like everything was always intentional. Even if it looks really bad, that's clearly 4D chess. Like, that type of nonsense just isn't reflective of reality. And look, you're getting bombarded by like every regulatory agency in every country. It's pretty expected that you're gonna have some news that you don't like. That's not hard to believe, and doesn't even necessarily make you look bad. You can always make that whole political argument that, oh, this is crypto under attack, yada yada, and this is what they're doing, and it's rough. But obviously, the sort of executives leaving, same thing. You could pivot that and present it sort of honestly and truthfully if you wanted to, but it's so much easier to just say, 4, and that's it. Stop using your brains.
Yeah, I do have some sympathy, because I agree with you. It's an impossible task to operate in all these countries. So they just chose to not be of any of them, right? Where are you based? Like, we're based in the metaverse. Like, we don't exist in any of these jurisdictions. And I'm sure that just infuriates every single one of those jurisdictions. So
for sure.
it sets you up for an interesting battle. Yeah. All right. Can one of y'all please tell me that Ethereum is bullish, or are you not going to do that?
I'm not going to do that.
Sorry, bro. It's close. I'll give you that much. It's close.
It is, yeah. It can be bullish. Just needs to go up a little. But
if it went up, it might be bullish.
Yeah, but I mean, this I hate. We can start with ETH-BTC because I think that's the more clear one. And that's clearly bearish, right?
I choose to ignore this one.
Yeah, but I mean, even if you ignore it, it's still clearly bearish. There's a very, very good trend here, right? And that trend has always been, not always, almost been available for one full year, right? Like, this has been trending down since September 22, and it's not really been slowing down. It's just kind of been steadily consolidating, moving down, lower highs, lower lows, right? So technically, this is a bearish trend, and you'd want to be looking for buys at supports lower. The nearest support is 0.057 here. But I honestly, to me, I look at this and I'm like, I want to kind of buy ETH over Bitcoin if we either break a high, like I just want to see one close above the highs we set, or if we hit this trend line here that we've had for a long, long time. I don't know why I have drawings on this. Probably talked about it on this show 2 weeks ago or something. But I just look at this and I'm like, I want to see it go back to that line, wherever that might be. Like, if this goes sideways, I'm willing to have it at 0.057. It's gonna be fast from now on. I'm willing to buy it down here, but I want to see it either show strength and break the highs, or I want to see it just completely crumble, and then I will buy it, because I think ETH is something that you want to own if it gets too cheap. So that's the ETH-BTC view that I have. It's a downtrend, and it doesn't really make much sense to be bullish on it over Bitcoin, right? But then you look at ETH-USD, and it's very, very close to breaking out. But it hasn't done so. Like, we had this false breakout here on the weekly time frame. Then we had a retest here, and technically here, and technically here. The more often we retest that level, the less likely it is to hold, right? So you have this kind of weird situation where, if we push in this level 1 or 2 more times, I just don't think it's going to hold again. And the moment we close above the level, you would still want to kind of target 2.5K. The question is, do you at that point want to own ETH, or do you want to own Bitcoin? And I think the answer is most likely you want to own Bitcoin, right? Because I think this breakout, if we get it, it's because Bitcoin is going to break out. Bitcoin is going to, if we go to 2.5K, I think Bitcoin is going to trade at 35, 40K. If not higher. And I think ETH-BTC is probably underperforming, just based on how ETH-BTC is set up. So whether ETH-USD is bullish or not, largely depends on Bitcoin, in my opinion. Just based on the fact that, like, against Bitcoin, it's been underperforming, so you'd expect that to kind of continue, and then you might as well just buy Bitcoin. But yeah, there is a setup here. If it goes back above 1.930 or something, like up here, closes above, I see like an ETH trade shape out. It's just, I'm not sure if that's going to be actually like better than Bitcoin, or if you're actually just going to lose a bunch of money in comparison to someone that just took the same trade on Bitcoin.
Is it possible that well, I don't know how long the delay is on the ETF potential, like decision making. I don't know how long that period is for BlackRock stuff. But my question is, assuming it's a month or two, is it possible that both of these just continue to go sideways and we actually have a more prolonged altcoin recovery? Because there was a significant capitulation amongst the altcoin landscape, and I have to admit that I bought a little bit of dinosaur DeFi, and it makes me very nervous. I did since your daughter was born. So in the last couple of weeks, I can't remember exactly when. And at first, my decision looked very good, and then it started to retrace, and I'm just like, am I just going to round trip this dumb DeFi trade or not? And I'm not sure. Yeah. But do you think there's an opportunity for altcoins? I guess is my question.
Like, honestly, I don't really see the appeal of altcoins here, just because if we get a delay on the ETF, I think the altcoins are going to nuke harder than Bitcoin. And if we get an approval, I think they will not be able to keep up. In between those, like, as long as, like you said, if we just get silence for the next few weeks, maybe. But lately, what we've been getting is, if Bitcoin's been going sideways, altcoins have not really been doing too much. Like, you look at Uni, you look at, like, I can almost pull up every single, like, any of the coins. They go up for a while and then they just bleed it out again. And I don't necessarily think there's much risk appetite from people outside of crypto to buy altcoins, right? Like, there's a bunch of people that inside crypto that basically meme themselves into buying this and that. Like, Bitcoin Cash's been like a hot one, Litecoin's been hot. But the moment the reason to buy these things, for example, Litecoin the halving, Bitcoin Cash, just because I think Bitcoin Cash actually has a few reasons why people buy it that are really interesting.
Roger Ver has mental illness.
Yes. No, but I think Bitcoin Cash is basically, like, you can make an argument for, like, BlackRock is gonna jump into Bitcoin, and then you have like this Bitcoin Cash thing, which is staying more true to the ethos of Bitcoin, which I'm not necessarily agreeing with, but I think that's like good.
Sorry, what's the argument? I don't understand.
Like, basically, you could argue that Bitcoin Cash is not tainted by BlackRock of sorts. I'm pretty sure that's going to come around.
Bitcoin Cash is not tainted because no one uses or cares about it.
I mean, I totally agree. Like, I think this is all bullshit, but you have to think about, like, okay, how can people spin this, and what are
but those people who believe that narrative have no money to buy my bags. And I don't get anything.
I mean, the people that buy these kind of narratives have pumped Bitcoin Cash from like 100 to 300.
Wasn't that Korea? I swear that was the Korean gambling bid, because I saw the hot bit up.
Listen, there's a lot worse bids than the Korean gambling bid.
Yeah, I know, it's pretty fucking good. I just don't know if they're making cyberpunk philosophical arguments about.
I mean, that's not the only one too. The other argument for it is basically that it's one of the few coins that is listed amongst pretty much, like, whenever a traditional kind of company, whatever, traditional money wants to get into crypto, when they want to make an exchange, they name Bitcoin, Litecoin, ETH, and Bitcoin Cash as the coins to be able to be traded, right? And they're just boomers. They just trade the boring old shit. But I think that's also like one of the ones like that just kind of catapulted this one. I don't necessarily agree with any of this. It's just basically like, I see a bunch of people buying this because of those kind of reasons, speculating that other people might want to buy it too because of those reasons. And that's how crypto works, right? You look at Neo, for example. The most funny shit happens.
Did you say Neo?
Yeah, Neo.
Man, sometimes I think I'm looking at dinosaur coins and Don's
no, but I'm trying to make a point here, which is basically like we had this whole like China narrative, right? Where like it was like people were like, oh yeah, we're gonna get Hong Kong, I think was it, right? They're gonna like kind of get big into crypto. So a bunch of Americans were like, well, if they get back into crypto, they're gonna buy the Chinese coins. So we're gonna buy the Chinese coins. And then like the Chinese people, at least from the ones that I've heard, were basically like the idiot Americans are gonna buy the Chinese coins because they think they're gonna pump. And then a bunch of people bought this shit. It went up from, I think this was it, from like $6 to $15, which is like a 2x and something. And then everyone realized like no one gives a shit. Like no one is buying this. Just like no one in China is buying this, and no one in America is buying this for any other reason than speculating that the other part will buy it. And I think that's basically the same thing for a lot of these altcoins. It's a bunch of people making up a narrative and trying to front run other people. And then you have a bunch of people that jump into that trade. And then at the end of the day, everyone notices that they don't have anyone to dump on besides themselves. And then it just unwinds again. And that's been the story. And I think that's kind of like, basically, that's how Bitcoin Cash and Litecoin are going to end up playing out as well. Like the moment you realize like, hey, we actually don't have any exit liquidity because no one really gives a shit about all of this, it's just going to create it back down again. But until then, you have these kind of dumb, stupid narratives that people make up, meme themselves into believing, and then it pumps a little bit. But usually they fully retrace as well, just because, there's no one really to buy the bags because crypto isn't really in the mainstream right now.
So you're saying there's not really anything by way of altcoin that you like?
Yes, it's a long-winded narrative, long-winded kind of explanation of there's no one to dump on, right? Like if you want to dump anything on anyone, like who is it gonna be? And the answer right now, I think, is the only people that you can dump on is your peers. So if you shill like an altcoin, the people that you're gonna have to sell into are gonna be the people that you shilled into this, which fair enough. But yeah,
and I don't get excited about that. I just the Bitcoin ETF decision is not until February 24, by the way. So it could go until February of 2024. Whether it actually goes to that time, I don't know. Apparently, the SEC has a 240-day final timeline in terms of saying yay or nay for things. So, I don't know. This is the type of time where nobody believes in it, nobody cares. Like where sometimes you do get these month-long opportunities for altcoins. I agree with you. There's not enough outside money to float everything up. So that the best way for it to show up would probably be like some form of sector rotation versus all altcoins go up all the time, which is what you get when the market is hot as a whole, right? Like, and there's just lots and lots of new money piling in. So I don't think it's right for that. But I do wonder if there's maybe some opportunities for sector rotations within altcoin land.
Yeah, I think the best we can do is basically get people to dump their one sector altcoin to buy another one, and that pumps, and then maybe go back. But like fresh money is pretty hard to attract right now, I think, in the altcoin world. I mean, you see it everywhere, also in the NFT space, right? Like people are leaving or trying to leave, and they can actually not leave. Like a lot of projects are just trying to kind of sell out, but no one wants to buy them. And I think that's kind of the same for most of these altcoin projects. It's also like crypto companies are, I think, like almost at the all-time lows, where you have basically almost no interest in starting anything in crypto right now, which could be a good thing, right? Like basically a bunch of people capitulate, usually a bottom thing, but could also just be like, even if it is that, like capitulation on the entire market, like usually that is followed by a couple of months of just complete and utter boredom and no interesting price action. And I think that's more likely than not. Like even if this is bullish capitulation and we're setting bottoms on like the relative pairs right now, I'm not really expecting them to reverse out of this. because I mean, you just look at AVAX has been chilled in the last few days, right? For example, and then I look at this, and I've been kind of making fun of this. I've been making fun of this for like basically a year now. And every time like this season uptick, it's just back to continuous dumping. And
I think AVAX has a lot of frozen coins that belong to people as well, and so will provide more downward pressure if those ever get released. I feel like this is a good example. Alternative layer 1, AVAX versus Solana. I do feel like Solana is like playing the narrative better in terms of the builders and all this kind of stuff. There's more like inside crypto narrative attention on Solana than there is on AVAX. And I think that matters in terms of what its potential is.
Yeah, I think Solana is actually in an interesting spot because you had all the non-believers that were just in it for whatever reason, washed out with the whole FTX drama, right? Like everyone that was just holding it because like that seemed a good thing to hold. I think got washed out during the scandal, basically. That massive new candle.
I really thought it was going to go to $5.
Oh, yeah.
I think so many people would have wanted to own it at that.
I mean, I was ready to buy it at 440.
Yeah, I mean, that line right there, like anyone, I think anyone on sub $5 Solana is going to look at that and get excited and maybe just never get that opportunity.
Yeah. I mean, Cred shielded at the bottom.
I know Cred not talked about it because I was like, I don't know, is it going to $5? Cred's like, I might just buy now.
Better, guys. I made $0 off of that trade, so you're welcome.
Oh, I mean, if it makes you guys feel any better, like I bought Bitcoin Cash at 200, or like 190, in this daily candle, and then I sold it before going to the hospital at 190, or like 180, somewhere like near the bottom. And then it went to 300. So it's just how it is.
I don't need to give any evidence of my bad trades. Everybody already knows.
Yeah, but yeah, shit happens. But right now, like I'm just not too sold on any of the narratives. Even the ones that I liked, like the Litecoin trade, that's played out. I'm not gonna hold into the halving. I think that's a little bit of a foolish game to play. Yeah, so I'm gonna stay out.
I guess what my point would be broadly is I do think that we're going to have some really good outperformance opportunities where just random coins, and I don't think it's the meme coins and stuff anymore. I think that played out. But where you do have some coins that just outperform Bitcoin and Ethereum, and it's an opportunity to stack Bitcoin and Ethereum. I don't know exactly when, and I don't know exactly what it'll look like. If I did, I'd be more wealthy than I am. But I do think that we're going to see those opportunities this year in a pretty real way. Like you're going to have people that are running up 2 and 3x relative basis. And I don't know. I hope I have an opportunity to capture that. But that's my summer prediction, I guess.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a few coins. There always is, right? It's just a question of if you can find it early enough. And I think for most people, like if you're just looking at a broad altcoin market, assuming it's going to go down relative to Bitcoin just makes sense. But that doesn't mean there's not going to be outliers, right?
Yeah. Like and that's my broad thesis is still that. Like I don't think it's like let's buy 20 of these things and hold them for a year. That's not what I'm saying at all.
Yeah, I mean I hate Bitcoin dominance chart. Oops, that's wrong. But like if you just look at that, that's been wild, right?
Yeah,
like it's so strong, and I don't think that's necessarily gonna stop going up. I mean I could see it go all the way up here, which like would be another whatever 10, 20, 30% on a lot of these altcoins on a relative basis, where they lose 10, 20, 30% more. Wouldn't be shocked, just because it makes so much sense narrative wise, right? And I think a lot of people in crypto are in crypto and don't hold any Bitcoin. And now that we have a clear Bitcoin narrative, I think a lot of them, if Bitcoin goes high enough, as in if Bitcoin goes up, a lot of these people will realize that that's foolish. Happened before when we had the whole like Bitcoin futures thing back in 2017, right? Where a bunch of people were just like, oh shit, like I'm not holding any Bitcoin, and this is entirely Bitcoin centric. And then Bitcoin ran up and people capitulated on the altcoins massively. Altcoins went down 50, 60, 70% while Bitcoin was running up. And then there was a massive rotation into altcoins afterwards. And I think with this narrative, you could get like a similar result where you have Bitcoin go up, at least relative to everything else. And then you will get the rotations into the altcoins when Bitcoin is topping. I think this cycle is probably going to end very similar to back then.
Nothing is new.
Yep.
All right. Well, let's leave it there. Hope to talk to everybody again next week. Thanks for joining us this weekly open. You can like and subscribe, tell your friends, all that good stuff. We appreciate you joining us in the thick of dog days of summer, whatever they call it. Hope everybody has a good one. Talk to you later.